So I am recording. This is Flash. Use ActionScript 3. Okay. Here we are. Properties. Knowing change your frame rate. I like using 30. If you're doing a high definition, 1920 by 1080 is my recommended size for my students. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to back up the same way you would zoom in and zoom out in Illustrator or Photoshop. Spacebar command will give you a zoom, and then you add the Alt key, you get the zoom out. Cool. This is your timeline. Right now there's only one frame, one layer. If you want to add new layers for multiple objects to be animated, you can do so. Okay. If you don't like it, you can press the delete button right over here. Okay. Cool. So most people want to bring their graphics from Illustrator into Flash. So I'm going to open Illustrator. While Illustrator is opening up in the background, let me describe a few things about animation. Okay. I'm just going to make a random shape on Flash, say an oval. Okay. Right now it's fill color black with a stroke. I'm going to say no stroke. And if you don't want strokes on objects, guys, just make sure that there's a do not enter slash going through it. Cool. On layer 1, I'll just call this ball. And I'm going to click and drag a shape on this layer. Okay. Select my object. If I want to move the ball, there's a few options. I'm going to right click. I'm going to do a motion tween. That's a simple way of just getting an object to go from one direction to another. So on frame 1, the ball's there. I move my timeline cursor, this red line here. And if you move it, it will do the mathematics for you. That green line indicates its path. If I go to frame 30 and do this, you can see it's been... Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, if you get your direct selection tool, you can actually modify um, the curvature here. Sorry, if I go to convert anchor tool, and you can actually change that path so it'll be like a smooth curve. Okay, I'm gonna lock that layer so I don't play with it. Go to layer 2, and I'll do the same thing. Actually, I'll just hide the ball for a sec. Go into shape and see I'm on layer 2. I'm gonna call this square ball. If I click a shape, and you could bring an Illustrator graphic and do the same thing. So this is gonna be shape tween. This is a refresher. I made a mistake. I hate creating graphics with strokes. All right, so if I have on my layer on frame 1 a square, and I click on this, and I say right click, and I'm going to do a shape tween. So I'm going from the top bottom. This is a refresher for everybody. So remember on frame 1, it's a square. If I move down the line and I press F6, or if you want to right click and say insert a keyframe. Keyframe means there's something key happening in this frame. Okay, F6 is a shortcut. You know you did it right when you get a dot on there and an arrow going through saying this is what it is in frame 1. And you can add frames in between if you like. And this is what it's going to look like at the end of it all. So on shape tween, if I wanted to, I could grab my sub-selection tool, grab a shape. So you're telling the computer on this keyframe, modify the shape. The computer will figure out the mathematics between frame 1 and say frame 30. Okay. If I wanted to say in frame 15 do the same thing, I'm going to press F6, or you can right click, insert keyframe. I can modify the shape this way. Oh, that's kind of cool. So from 1 to 5, it's going to do this and then do that. Okay. And here I'll go further, say 15 frames later, I'll press F6. If I wanted to, I can select a shape, delete it on that frame, grab another shape, for example, a ball, click and drag it on that frame, and then the computer from frame 30 to frame 45 will figure out the mathematics between that last shape to the shape it is now. So we've gone from a square to a ball. Okay. Can I do other things like move it? Yes, it will actually play the position. Or if I want to scale it, I can scale it smaller. So it will do all that, and then my last frame, it will go into that position. So you can move things as well in shape tween. Okay. One more layer. Explain the basics again. Let me just hide that. Lock it. Here's a ball. Classic tween. I'm pretty old school, so I'll right click on this object and Mind you, I have a gray area because it went that long. If you need to delete objects or frames, select the frame, hold shift and click the last frame, then right click and say, I want to remove those frames, and all those frames are gone. So on frame one, which is this ball, I'm going to right click and say, let's just do classic tween. Classic tween does essentially what the motion tween does, but there's a few other cool options you can do. So I'm going to right click, sorry, not right click. Say in 15, I'm going to go F6. Notice it's purplish and there's an arrow going through. So grabbing the object on frame 15, I can move it. So it was able to do a basic animation, same as a motion tween. But what's cool about it is I can go to properties and play with other effects like color. So I'm going to play with the tint, and I can play with the tint. So it will actually change color from that green to frame 15. Let's go to frame 30, F6, and click on the object, and I want to change the tint again. And I want to change the position, or I want to change the scale. Let me hold shift. All right. Or rotation. Well, obviously a circle rotated is not really exciting. All right, do you guys get that? So those are some of your basics. I just went through motion tween, shape tween, and also your classic tween. I prefer classic tween just because you can play with color effects. Click on it here. If I didn't want to play alpha and say I wanted to be transparent, so it would actually go from being opaque to transparent. So you can do some really cool things with classic tween. All right, enough about that. Let's get to the nitty gritty. You guys want to learn how to bring your Illustrator file into Flash and animate it, right? Okay. Oops. All right, let's go to Damien's graphics. So I'll give a shout out to Damien for giving out his graphics. All right, notice your Illustrator file, the more layers you have or the more organized you are here, it's going to make life easier. I'm going to copy all my graphics. And when I copy, for some reason, Flash understands that they're going to be brought in. Now, this is the part where people get confused, so pay attention here. Okay? I want to bring in my cartoon character, but if you bring it in right away, it goes right to the stage, and that's not what you want to do. You want to do this. You want to go to Insert and make a new symbol. Make it a graphic. Don't use movie clip, yeah, and call it whatever you want. So I'm going to say Stitch Original. Okay. So what happened here, as you can see, is I'm no longer in scene. I'm in this new little door I've opened into the program, and I called it Stitch Orange. It has a new timeline, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Command V, and Flash knows that what I'm pasting is from Illustrator. So it says, hey, do you want to paste this using the Adobe Illustrator file import preferences? You're going to leave it as that. Don't press as a bitmap. That's just going backwards. Okay, you want to keep it as a vector. Maintain the layers. Okay, so what I've done is, and I will create a new scene. And so there's scene 1. So if you're looking for new scenes, go to Window, Other Panels, and Scene. I'm just going to hold the screen there for a sec. You guys see that? Okay. And then you get your scene dialog box if you want to edit using multiple scenes. What I'll do here is the same as adding layer. I'll make a scene 2. So it's a blank new scene. So scene 1's still there. My last frame is 45, and then from there, if I were to play this movie, it would go to scene 2. So scene 2 is blank. Now, in your library, I don't know if you noticed this, but there is the Stitch Original. Okay? I'll double click this. This takes me into Stitch's parameters with all the layers. Okay? Now, I always tell students, tell the story first, worry about the details later. Okay? I'll explain that in a sec. So I'll go back to my scene, and say I want to start my movie with a close-up of Stitch. You guys watching this? I'm going to drag this into my timeline. Okay, there he is. Now, this white screen represents the actual television per se, or the projector. Okay. If I want to do a close-up for 2 seconds, this is what I'll do. Grab my object, enlarge it. Okay. Remember, that white screen represents what gets shown on the screen. If you wanted to create a panning motion, check this out. Right click, I'll do a motion tween. On frame 1, I'm going to tell the computer, and notice the little dot there, that I want Stitch to be off the screen. Uh, then on frame 30, which is really 1 second, if I wanted to make it longer, I'll go to 60, okay? And here at the end frame, I'm going to tell the computer to move him across. Okay, and I'll keep that line somewhat straight. So the computer will animate his face on the screen. Does that make sense? Okay. If I go to Control and Test Scene, all right, now it's going to loop because it's just previewing it. Let's go to Show All. Okay. Now, say you want to bring a background in, like anything else, and I'll call this. You make a new layer, bring it below, and I'll call this BG. Now, BGF. You got the idea, guys. On this layer, I am going to just say I can bring a bitmap image, and that's easy. Just file. You can import a file to the stage or library. I like bringing things to the library because I can drag them afterwards. Okay. Let's say I just get a retro video game background. Okay, it's there. I'm going to place it on my new layer. Okay. I can size it up. I'll hold Shift here, and it can be as large as my screen. Okay. Now, a problem that students have is like, sir, I can't see my stage because my background's blocking what the stage looks like. And this is what I do as a trick. So hiding, I'll hide both of them for now. Making a new layer, and I'll put above, and I'll call this the frame. I will get a rectangle box. Go to my properties, make sure there's no stroke on it. Oh, sorry, no fill, and just a stroke, whatever color you like. And on this layer, I will click and drag a box that kind of showcases what the outline of my stage is, or my frame. So then when I go to preview this, I know that this is where the objects are going to be in that green frame. I lock it so I don't want to touch it. Okay, so what's going to happen is Stitch is going to go across Super Mario Brothers timeline. Okay, now you have the option here. You can create a new blank keyframe right after this and start fresh. Or you can go to your scene and create a new scene. I find students have an easier time just creating new scenes, so they can just go to on the storyboard, go from shot to shot, and they can just base their scenes based on the shots of the animation. Okay, if you want to play with a single timeline animation, that's fine, because your graphics are there in your screen. That is preference on how you want to do this. So, what would you prefer, guys, for now? Scenes? Okay, cool. The drawback I would say is all my graphics are here. I could just now size them, but it's up to you. I like scene 2 as well. Okay, so say I'm going to do a next scene. I'm going to go to my library, but I have my background. But I'm going to focus really closely on, here I got my transform tool, hold shift. And this is where I'm going to be smart about this. I'm going to copy this frame. Sorry, copy this whole layer. Go to my scene 3 and paste the layer. You see the brilliance of that? Right? I don't know if you guys saw that or not. Just saves me time from building the whole thing again. Okay, anyways. Gonna lock that in place so I don't touch it. And I want to focus on, say, whoa. I skewed it by accident. See how that green rectangle helps me see what I'm going to focus on? I'm going to focus on this part of the animation. Layer 2, I'm going to bring Stitch in and drag him right in there. So I'm going to focus in on my area. I'm going to shrink him down. Okay. And say I'm just doing basic animation where, and guys, I'm not worried about his arms moving and his feet moving. That I can do later. I'll show you that afterwards, right? Some of you guys are probably excited to know about how to do that, but some people just want to get the story told. So on frame one on this layer, I'm going to call this stitch. And this is my BG, right? Cool. Now the BG is going to hide, and that's because I didn't extend it. So if I can go to frame 60, if I know that my production is going to be 3 seconds, or this frame is going to be 30 seconds long, or sorry, 3 seconds long, I'll go to 90 frames, and I'll press F5 because I'm not animating my background. So I'll just leave that as is, and you can click and drag things to spread them out. So here is where I'm going to play with basic animation stuff. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go classic with this one. So in frame one, he's off the stage. 5 frames later, I'm going to press F6 for a keyframe. Oops. There he is. I'm going to move him. So the computer has now moved him from there to there in that timeline. I'm going to make it fast. So 2 frames later, I'm going to press F6. And for some reason, he's jumped. A frame later, F6. Oops. And he's there. Oops. Let me go there. Okay. I'm going to use my precision, zoom in, and say, hey, I want it actually on the edge there. Actually, in retrospect, I'll bring him off here. F6 another layer, and then have him go across. So it looks like that. All right, and then do you guys get it? See how simple it is? Just move along, follow your timeline. If he's right there, let's press F6 again. Oops, right there, F6. Make sure you're highlighting the layer you want. And remember, the distance between the frames indicates how fast or slow. So this is only like 3 frames between. So this is going to be like a ridiculously fast jump. Do you guys see that? Because there's only a few frames. If you want to make it slower, click on that frame. Watch this. Drag it out. So now it looks like he's floating. Okay, so the distance between frames will make it easier for you to animate. Okay. Do you guys want to talk about details now? All right, so we move over. Say I go to another scene and I bring Stitch in. I'm going to right click on Stitch and make a duplicate of it. I'm going to say Stitch eye twitch. That rhymed. Okay. Now, this is right now not Stitch eye twitch, it's Stitch original. Okay? So I'm going to double click Stitch eye twitch and show you guys something really cool. There is all the animation. Now, I can show you how to move the arms and all that, but you should already know how to do that by rotating things. I'll show you quickly. If I had, say, the arm, okay, and notice the hand is, where's the other hand? Okay, so this layer right here, I'm going to press Command X, go to arm 2, which is right here, and I'm going to go edit, paste in place. But it's now part of that layer. See, layer 10 is garbage now. Damien did a lot of nice work, but I don't need the hand and arm to be separate. I want them all together. So I cut it and paste it into the same layer. So I'll just delete that layer because it's not needed anymore, because arm 2 is now all together. So I'm going to right click and say classic tween. All right. So on frame 1, this is a little trick you got to do if you want to rotate the arm. The center point on frame 1, move it to where you want the hinge point to be. Okay. So when I go a few frames later, say frame 5, I press F6. When I rotate it, it rotates off that hinge point. You guys see that? Now you're probably wondering, sir, what about the rest of them? Well, they're all on frame 1. So what I can do is hold Shift and select these objects and just press F5 because I'm not going to animate those parts. They're just going to be static. Okay, and I press F5. So it shows up. Now, in retrospect, uh, his arm is missing some of the graphic, but it's not a big deal. Okay, so that's how I automate the arm. If I wanted to do it back and forth, here's a little trick. Hold Shift, select all those objects in that layer. I'll copy them. Go to the frame afterwards, and you can paste those frames. Okay. Let me so I just grab all these, drag them out. Hold all these by holding Shift, drag them out. So what happened here is his arm is going to be going back and forth. Here's a little trick. Hold Shift, select that section, right click on it, reverse the frames. So what that does, it looks like a smooth transition back and forth. So you guys see that trick? Saves you time. Okay. Now, I go back to my scene and say I want to animate him going left to right. So he's there. F6 on frame 30 and move it there. Notice, wait a minute, sir, he's not moving his arm. Well, that's because this is the original. Here's a trick. Watch this. See how he's moving? And he's not moving his arm? I'm going to right click on this object. Say swap the symbol. He's going to say, what do you want to switch it with? I want to swap with that one. Okay, watch this. Wait a minute, is this the same one? Yes, the arm movement. Okay. So, did I do that right? Let me click again. Swap symbol. I want to swap with iSwitch. Did that work now? Yeah. See how I did that? So what I'm trying to show you here is, guys, get your character, tell your story, then afterwards you can make duplicate versions of your character doing arm movements, eye twitching or mouth moving. Then you can just right click swap it with the symbol that you've done the details with. Because here it is. You want to get nice marks but if you don't tell the story, you're not going to get marks. Even if you did all the cool details, you didn't tell the story. Tell the story first. Move your character left to right. Show me close-ups. Show me medium shots. Show me panning movements and all that. Then worry about the details afterwards. Is that helpful? All right, so I even saved this file, which is a shame. Imagine all that, and right, I'm going to call this Stitch Tutorial. All right, and I'll show you guys how to make this a SWF. Here, I'll do that really quickly. Because it's designed for the internet, you can make this in HTML, which is a hypertext markup language for the internet, and you can make it in SWF, a shockwave format that's web compatible. So when you publish this, where you save the file will make another version that's ready for the internet. Okay, you can make GIFs and JPEGs as well. There's also the option of going File, Export, and exporting your movie, and then choosing a format like QuickTime and making this a MOV file. Okay, let's press save. Some cool. So it's making a 1920 by 1080. I'll make this a video file that you can throw on YouTube. Okay. Sometimes I won't lie to you, it gets a little glitchy with Twitchy or Stitchy, whatever his name is. So you're gonna have to play with. But usually the best compression is animation. And then press OK. And what's cool about this is when you press export, it makes a movie file on the location of your hard drive as a MOV file, which you can throw on YouTube. Okay. While I have the gang here, and maybe you're watching this at home or at school, any other questions that other students might be having about Flash animation? So I addressed the three animations. I didn't show, you know what? I didn't show you guys how to do masking. You want to show you masking really quickly? Okay. Okay, and yeah, go ahead. You know what? I'll do another video for the thing. I'll just stop this video because it might be long and people online are like, this is brutal. And I know. Anyways, this is your live lesson with Mr. Almeida. I'm signing off.